Saat Farkı'ndan merhabalar. Her hafta farklı ülkelerden, farklı milletlerden konuklar ağırlıyoruz ve bölgesel, küresel meselelere dair farklı perspektiflere yer vermeye çalışıyoruz. Bu hafta İstanbul'u ziyaretinde fırsat bulduğumuz ve bize vakit ayıran önemli bir konuğum var. Tunus Eski Dışişleri Bakanı, El Nahda Hareketi liderlerinden aynı zamanda. Doktor Refik Abdusselam bizlerle. Bugün kendisiyle hem biraz Tunus siyasetini ve bölge siyasetini hem de yakın zaman önce çıkan kitabını biraz konuşacağız. Biraz böyle bölgeye dair yorumlarını, değerlendirmelerini alacağız. Your Excellency, thank you very much. Welcome. Hoş geldiniz.
Hoş bulduk.
Dr. Refik, I would like to start with Tunisia, and we will also talk about your book, the recent one. Its title is God and Meaning in the Age of Modernity, the Discourse Between Hegemony and Pluralism. So we will also talk about the book later, but I would like to start with Tunisia first, because there are lots of things happening in Tunisia. Once the only success story of the Arab Spring, but Tunisia has been facing a dangerous political and economic crisis since the revolution a decade ago. It started last year on June 25 when the President Kais Saied fired the Prime Minister and suspended the parliament. And since then, things are not really going well. Now you are going into a referendum next month, if I'm not wrong. So protests have been increasing over the past few weeks, months. So could you tell us the current situation in Tunisia right now and what went wrong after the Arab Spring?
Unfortunately, now we are facing a coup d'etat, a real coup d'etat. You know, I think this president is in process to dismantle the democratic system. And the achievements that we have built during the last decade, at least 10 years after the Tunisian revolution. That's correct, economy was not functioning very well, but at least the situation was much better than it is right now. So we are facing a very complex crisis, a combination between political and economic crisis. The economy is not going very well. The level of unemployment is very high. In addition to that, a political crisis, people elected Kais Saied to preserve the democratic system, but unfortunately now, as I said before, he's in process to dismantle the political institution. He jeopardized, the parliament, dissolved the parliament, delete the constitution. So we lose everything now. So Tunisia is facing a real political as well economic and financial crisis.
You said people supported him in the beginning, after the coup also. By the way, some said it was a coup, some said it was not a coup. In Turkey also it was a part of some discussions. But it was a coup, obviously.
It's a soft coup.
It's a soft coup, let's say. So people supported it, even after the coup. But now how is the public support for Tunisian president?
It's quite clear, the popular support of this coup d'etat is in regress. The social basis of the president is reduced. And I think maybe the people, the beginning of some part of the society, they have some illusion that Kais Saied will improve the situation. Since they have seen, a conflict within the parliament, a political polarization, they assume that Kais Saied will improve the situation. But it's quite clear the situation is becoming, terrible, even worse than it was before the coup d'etat. I think the level of confidence of the people to the president, to the political system, is no longer there. And I think the country is facing, as I said before, a deep political as well economic crisis.
Dr. Refik, is the country that sparked the Arab Spring headed back to authoritarian rule, do you think, after more than 10 years? Is the Arab Spring over now? In Tunisia and in the region also, I would like to hear your analysis on this.
This is part of the picture, definitely. There is a real political, regress, political regress in the country. And Tunisia is not immune, or was not and still not immune from the regional environment. When you look at what happened in the region, different countries of the region, in Egypt, in Libya, in Syria, everywhere, Tunisia is, at the end of the day, is not an isolated island. But the other face, or the other picture, is that there is a civil resistance from the political forces, from different political parties, from the civil society. There is a huge resistance to the tendency of going back to political despotism. There is no doubt that the Tunisian society is in process of civil resistance to this coup d'etat. And I think this coup d'etat has no chance, to survive. If you look at the resistance and the rejection that coming from the grassroots of the society and the different, political forces in the country.
I also want to talk more about the region, but before going into the broader region, I also would like to hear your analysis on, I think the constitution, the new constitution, the referendum will be next month.
Exactly.
And there are some discussions now currently because Islam will be removed from the new constitution, I think. So that's why there are some discussions now in Tunisia, in the region, everywhere. So will this have any major implications for Tunisia, for the Tunisian public society?
Not at all. I think this is part of the political game because Tunisians agreed since 59, in the constitution of 59. And after, the independence of the country in 56, they already have a political and intellectual discussion and dialogue about, the social and ideological choices of the country. And it is already, included in the Tunisian constitution of 59 and also readapted in the constitution of 2014 that Tunisia has a civil state with reference to Islam and the official language of the country. Our political system is Republican. As well, the references of the country, Islam is the religion of the country, and the Arabic language is the official language of the country, with the respect of religious consciousness or religious freedom and freedom of expression. But I think this is a part of the political game. It's quite clear that in the region as a whole, there are two failed experiences. The top-down process of secularization, as well the top-down process of Islamization. We are in favor of a neutral state, but which respects, the religion of the country and respects the official language of the identity of the people. So I think this is a part of the political game of Qais Said because he's very keen to deepen the political and the ideological polarization and maybe to buy himself as an enlightened despot in the region. But this could not, delete or neglect. We can't neglect the real face of the country that there is, or the real picture that we are facing a real coup d'etat since roughly 11 months now. Mm-hmm.
But I think most of the parties, opposition parties now are boycotting the referendum, but it will be held next month. So what do you expect after that?
I think it will be boycotted by the majority of the political forces and the civil society. 95% at least of the political parties rejected this referendum because they see it as a coup d'etat against the constitution and against, the legacy, the achievements that we have accumulated during the last 10 years.
Your Excellency, I also would like to hear from you about the Ennahda party. Your party has dominated Tunisian politics since especially 2011. Today its leader, Rachid Ghannouchi, is banned from travel. I want to ask you, because the Muslim Brotherhood, Ikhwan, was accused of not following a comprehensive policy covering all parties, whereas Ennahda, your party, decided to share its power with secular and social democrat parties. Do you regret? And what were the major mistakes when you look today? What do you see? What kind of mistakes or what kind of risks you took? Could you please elaborate on this?
I think we didn't regret, or we don't regret, actually, to follow a politics of compromise or compromise between different, political forces. Because what will be the alternative? The alternative is to deepen the ideological and political polarization. In the nascent democracy, you need to build a wider, compromises, wider, social and political basis. What we regret is that maybe we underestimate the dangerous face of populism of Qais Said. We trusted him as a layman from, or a normal person who coming from the academian sphere that will be preserve the constitution, the political achievements of the country. But we have seen now there is a real threat from within, from the political system. You trusted the president, you elected him by the constitution, and then he dismantled the political institutions and delete the constitution. This is the real dilemma. Maybe we overestimate the dangerous face of Qais Said, and this is the real problem.
So how should we read the recent wave of resignations from Ennahda party, for example? I also want to hear it from you.
I think the party...
Is there loss of trust also on your party, or it is part of some another reason?
It's
How
part
do you
of
see
the
it?
political climate in the country as a whole, you know. Because democracy is in regress, but I think there is support maybe from the grassroots of the party, and the party is united, and there is a need to have a united front, not only within Ennahda itself, between Ennahda and other political forces, to face, you know, this dark face of dictatorship and political despotism that represents a real danger to the country and its democratic achievements.
Your Excellency, can you say that there is a united opposition in Tunisia now against Kais Saied?
I think definitely there is a united, you know, political fronts from different, you know, political parties and including the civil society against the policy of Kais Saied. I have no doubt about this.
Mm-hmm. So Tunisia will find a way to exit from this dangerous situation, and it will be a model again for the region. Do you think? Do you hope?
I hope so. I hope so. I think this coup d'etat has no chance, you know, to survive, as long as it's rejected by the majority of the political forces, political parties, and even, you know, the population as a whole, the grassroots in the street. They have no longer, you know, any confidence to Kais Saied. I think this coup d'etat has no chance, you know, to survive.
Dr. Refik, I also want to ask you, in terms of so-called political Islam, because there are some analysis saying that it is over now, the time for Ikhwan is over, it is the end of this Arab Spring period in general, and there are questions whether this whole process, reconciliation, regional reconciliation process as well, signaling the end or decline, let's say, of political Islam in the Arab world in general. How do you see this? How do you see this? How would you analyze it when you also consider the regional rapprochement in the recent months and recent years? Do you think this is also part of it?
The rapprochement is good for the region because there is a need of political stability. It's not a problem, you know, to have a, you know, regional compromises between different regional countries, you know, to stabilize the whole region due to the real threats that coming within the region, from within and outside the region. It's quite understandable. But if I go back to what is called political Islam, although the term is very ambiguous and loose, you know, it's used within different, you know, political contexts. But I think whatever the mistakes of Ikhwan Muslimin or what is called political Islam, there is no alternative now because the region is in a deep crisis and we can't predict. The political situation is very complicated one. And I think Ikhwan Muslimin or other what is called, you know, party of political Islam, they may make some mistakes or made some mistakes. But what would be the alternative? I think I don't see any other real political forces that impose itself. We can't judge any political forces only based on the elections. If they are, you know, neglected or marginalized by the election, you can't say that this political forces has no chance, you know, to survive. But to impose a dictatorship, a civil or a military dictatorship by force, and you say that this political force is no longer, you know, has no longer, you know, a chance to survive, it's a myth and it's illusion. And there is no other political forces that prove on the ground, prove themselves that they are the real political alternative. But I think I strongly believe that there is a need for a new political Islam that, you know, benefits, learn its, you know, course, its experience, and overcome its shortcomings and mistakes, but accumulated on the previous achievements that we have since the Arab Spring 2011. I think the region is in a process of regress in different fields, but this does not mean that the file of Arab Spring is closed. I don't think so. I think the region is open to different perspectives and different, you know, possibilities, and the demand for political change is still there in the streets of the Arab region, and we may see, you know, a second or a third wave of Arab Spring. Who knows? Because this definitely the situation is not stable, and you can't predict what will happen the next year or after 2-3 years. You never can predict.
So do you expect other waves throughout the region?
I think so.
Or these dictatorships or authoritarian regimes will stay for a long time.
Definitely, yeah. I think we are facing a fragile political stability or a facade political stability. We already have such experience. We remember in the era of Ben Ali that, the predictions that Ben Ali or the regime of Ben Ali is very stable. But sadly, we discovered after the Tunisian revolution, it was just a facade political stability. And this is what happened exactly in the region. If you see now what happened in Egypt, you can't predict what will happen, after 2, 3, 5 years. If you look at the financial, economic crisis, which is associated and mixed with the political crisis and political dilemma, so you never expect what will happen in the region. There is great possibility that we will see another wave of what is called Arab Spring, second or third or even fourth wave of political change in the region.
Your Excellency, you were foreign minister of the country of Tunisia, so I would like to hear your thoughts about the broader picture, with also including foreign actors, particularly Israel. There is also a rapprochement, there is a process of rapprochement between the countries. Now even Saudi Arabia is looking for ways to normalize with Israel. Turkey also normalize its relations with Israel, with the United Arab Emirates. So how do you see the regional picture now, including Israel in the picture now, stronger? And also there are some debates of post-US era in the region. Now US is withdrawing from the region. There are some fears, some let's say, debates about this post-US era. So how do you see the region post-US with Israel stronger in the region? So how would you elaborate on that?
I think it's a fact, concrete fact, that the international order is becoming more and more, complex. We are in process to see, a multipolar international order. The general assumption after the Cold War, the end of Cold War, that we are entering the American era is a myth. Definitely, we are seeing, polarization is going back to the international order. It's no longer the case between the USSR and the United States, but now different, centers of powers in the world, between the Americans, the Chinese, the Russians, emergent, new powers in the international order. It's a solid fact. I think the rapprochement between the regional powers in the region, mainly the countries, Iran, Turkey, Egypt, is good. But we don't have trust of Israel, because what is positive is the compromises and rapprochement between different countries of the region, between Arab countries, Turkey, as well Iran. But the problem is that based on the strategy of this rapprochement, for what reason that this rapprochement? Is it just to have cooperation between different countries of the region, or just against Iran? I think the strategy to have alliance against Iran is a big mistake, a strategic mistake, because Iran at the end of the day is part of the region, and the best way to have compromises between Arabic countries, Turkey and Iran, to face external challenges, not necessarily coming from Iran, but it's quite clear that coming from Israel. So the real threat and the real challenge is not coming necessarily from Iran. It's coming from Israel, which occupied, the Palestinian land, with the expansion of settlements in the region, with the threat to Jerusalem or Quds. So this is the real threat. It's not looking at Iran, or for some Arabic countries within the Arabic League. I think there is a deceiving, strategy or misfunctioning strategy. Who looks at Turkey, they said, Turkey and Iran are the real threat to the region, which is a myth. The real threat is coming from the Israeli occupation. And I think the people of the region are fully convinced that the main strategic threat coming from Israel, not from Turkey or from Iran.
So you think good relations with Israel will not help the region at all?
Not at all. It's not, part of the stabilization of the region. The origin or to set up a real political stability in the region is to have compromises between different, forces of the region, between Arabs, Turkey, and Iran. This is the best way, not to look at Israel, because Israel represents a real threat to the stability of the region as a whole.
I see. Your Excellency, by the way, let's talk about Turkey a little bit. I know it's going to be a big question, and we don't have much time, but how would you assess Turkey's role since the Arab Spring, since the beginning of the Arab Spring up until now? Turkey's role in the region, during the Arab Spring, because there was a harsh criticism against Turkey during the Arab Spring for its support to Muslim Brotherhood in particular. How would you assess Turkey's role in the region since the Arab Spring?
To be honest, Turkey did not support Muslim Brotherhood or any political force. At the end of the day, there is a raison d'etat. But Turkey is looking at its national interest, and it succeeds to build a solid relationship within the countries of the region. But there is a general assumption between some Arabic regimes that Turkey is supporting Islam, political Islam, which is not true. You know, that's correct. Turkey is supporting, you know, the political change in the region, and it puts itself in the right direction, because what will be the alternative? To support despotic regimes in the region? So the best way is to support, you know, political change. We may have some regress, but this is, I think, the future perspective of the region. There is no escape from political change. It's a matter of time. You can't, you know, say that the region is fully stable, the Arabic world is fully stable, because this stability is imposed by military and civil dictatorship. It's not a natural political stability which is based on compromises and consensus between different political forces and between the countries of the region as a whole.
So you think, I mean, you say Turkey did not really support the Muslim Brotherhood, but they supported the, let's say, change in general against the authoritarian rules. But there are, you know, and there are many analyses saying that now, you know, in the beginning, Qatar, Turkey in particular supported Muslim Brotherhood, but right now, currently, since the start of this regional reconciliation process began, now the support is over, and Turkey and Qatar, because they were isolated because of their support, mainly because of their support to Muslim Brotherhood. Now the process is different, and now the support for the groups is over. So you don't agree with those analyses?
No, I don't agree, because it's a matter of time. You know, I think Turkey and Qatar put themselves in the right direction. They didn't support any political force. They support the political change in the region. Vis-à-vis another axis was counter-revolution. They supported the counter-revolution. What happened in Libya, the political crisis, or Yemen, not due to the what is called Arab Spring, it's due to the counter-Arab revolution, who tried, you know, to destabilize the region as a whole. What happened in Libya is the byproduct of the counter-revolution, not because the Libyans revolted against the regime of Gaddafi, or because the Egyptians revolted against Mubarak, or the Tunisians revolted against Ben Ali. They revolted because there is a need for political change. And the political and economic situation was terrible, but the crisis that we're facing during the last, you know, 7 or 8 years, due to the counter-revolutions, the axis of counter-revolutions who tried, you know, to topple, you know, the revolutions and to delete the political achievements that we have, the people of the region have accumulated during the last 10 years. This is the real dilemma, and this is the real problem.
Unfortunately, time is up, Your Excellency. Thank you very much for participating. Thank you so much for taking time.
Thank you very much. Thank you.
Evet, Saat Farkı'nı böylelikle bu haftada noktalamış olduk. Tunus eski Dışişleri Bakanı Doktor Refik Abdusselam bizlerleydi bu hafta İstanbul ziyaretinde. Bir röportaj verdi Ekotürk'te. Hem bölgeyi konuştuk, hem Tunus'un içinde bulunduğu sorunları konuştuk. Biraz Türkiye'yi, Türkiye'nin bölgesel politikalarını, özellikle Arap Baharı dönemindeki politikalarını konuşmaya çalıştık. Önümüzdeki hafta tekrar başka bir konuyla, başka bir konukla görüşmek dileğiyle. Hoşça kalın.